to learn something every day is just wonderful to hear. Her life was really brought down to real basics, and she's just picked herself up and pressed on by the help of God.
Very encouraging story.
It is a very.
Yeah.
Now you have some stories of people who've made similar amazing recoveries, and what we've learned from that.
Yeah.
Why don't you share one of those?
Yeah, you know, I've been so impressed with the neuroplasticity of the brain. And this, you know, in my training, I remember I was basically taught, like many of us were in medical training, that the brain was anatomically assigned, and if you've lost a certain function in part of the brain, then that was gone. But neuroplasticity has discovered the adaptability and how the brain can change what specific parts of the brain do. And so I wanted to share this story about Professor Pedro Baquirita. And at age 65, Professor Pedro had a massive stroke. He was in a wheelchair, paralyzed on the left side, affected his speech. In fact, after he died years later, the autopsy showed that he had over 90% destruction of the brain stem, including areas of the cortex, the surface of the brain. So, but the part that's remarkable was his son, George, was in medical school at the time and didn't want his father to just sit in a nursing home, brought him to where he lived and spent hours working with his father. In fact, he tells how he had him crawling around because he was weak on the left side, and so he got him to crawl against the wall. As Sue was demonstrating earlier, even when that limb is useless, or you might even not even be aware of it, you have to consciously think, where is my arm?
Right.
It's important that you involve it, that you move it, that even if passive movement has shown to stimulate neuron formation and reorganization. So
because it's really the wiring that's
right.
So we just need to rewire that body part.
Well, you know what's so exciting about that is, Dr. Nerida, is that we have discovered that our brain is continually rewiring like the bone. You know, we know that the osteoblasts, osteoclasts are continually reforming our bones. That's why when the astronauts go into space and weightlessness, their bone density changes, and they come back to gravity, it changes again. Same thing is actually happening in our brains, and we're not aware of it. We're continually reaffirming or reforming those connections. But anyway, back to Professor Pedro. So he actually was able to fully recover. It took about 3 years. And he was able to go back to work as a professor, worked for a few years before his untimely death at age 63, about 8 or 9 years later. And that's when his son had the autopsy done. And they were amazed at the damage that was still in his brain, but he had recruited and other areas of the brain to take over those functions. That's just remarkable.
Wow. So there's hope. Now we have a caller on the line, Myrene from Florida. Myrene, welcome to Go Healthy. What's your question for us this evening?
Okay, my question is, what's the best food that would target a person's brain that's recovering from a stroke?
Good question. Dr. Kelly, good food for brains.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the kinds of foods that will help the brain are known to be foods that are high in color and high in antioxidants. We think of berries.
Like Heidi was having in her breakfast.
That's right.
That smoothie.
That smoothie, that's right. And vegetables of color. The darker the color in general, the more the nutrients and the richer the nutrient. And another thing I think that's really important is making sure that we're getting plenty of the B vitamins in our diet. These are so important. So I recommend, if there's any question, actually take a one-a-day supplement just to make sure. But the best source of nutrients is whole foods.
Right.
So I'm not suggesting you can take the vitamin and forget the food.
No.
Need them both. And another very important thing is activity. Amazingly, Dr. Rady has a book out called Spark, and it's remarkable how he documents that physical activity actually changes the anatomy and the functionality of the brain. So exercise and physical activity is very important too.
More important than food, probably.
It may be.
By the sounds of it.
Maybe.
Now we have another caller, Myri from Illinois. Myri, what's your question?
Hi.
Welcome to Go Healthy. What's your question for us?
My question is, what is the difference between having a stroke and having a TA? And if you have a TA, does that indicate you will later have a stroke?
Yeah, a TIA is where the brain recovers in a short space of time, usually within hours. And it really is like a mini stroke. And what
Yes.
sets you up for TIAs also sets you up for strokes. I think you agree
Yes,
with
that's
that.
right. Yeah, the TIA technically, and it's a transient ischemic
Ischemic
attack,
attack.
it reverses its effects within 24 hours. But as she said, as the caller said, it is a known risk factor for stroke. In fact, a majority of people, I think it was 40% who have a TIA, will have a stroke within a few days. So you must not ignore a TIA. That's like an early warning. That's like chest pain for heart disease.
Right.
It's early warning. Just get it checked and
Yeah.
taken care of.
Right, and that's a good point. Now, Kathleen also called and she asked, do strokes come before heart attacks? And Kathleen, not necessarily. Some people get strokes, some people get heart attacks. It just depends where the blockage is in your blood vessels and whether blood is flowing through, whether that blockage breaks off, which one breaks off first. Typically speaking, if you have plaque, atherosclerosis in your blood vessels, that's throughout your body. So it just depends where the action happens first as to whether you get a stroke or a heart attack. But if you've had one, you're at risk for the other as well. Now, here's a text message. I've recently had a stroke. I'm slowly recovering. Why do I feel so tired when moving around the house?
Is that for me?
Yes.
That's if you think of a stroke, it's a tremendous insult to the body. It's healing takes time, healing takes energy. It pulls all of your resources, to that area to heal it. So I expect that fatigue is a huge issue for a lot of people recovering from stroke. So my advice would be, as far as energy conservation and pacing yourself and picking the time of day where you have the most activities to do those when you feel the best. Space them out, plan ahead, all those things. Ask for help. Some people don't like to do that as well. And just give it time. You need to be patient. You get extra frustrated when you're not able to do what you just want to do. So you really have to have a sense of, I'm just going to do what I can do today, and tomorrow will be incrementally better.
Right. I want to thank you, Sue, for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you again, Dr. Kelly.
Good to be here.
Now, if you or someone you love is on that long, slow journey of stroke recovery, I hope that what you've learned today has inspired you to keep striving for full recovery. Don't give up hope. If Heidi did it, you can too. Thanks for joining us on Go Healthy for Good. Tomorrow we've got a very special guest in the studio to discuss some of the secrets the government doesn't want you to know about health policy. Till then, go healthy for your own goodness, and I'll see you next time.